had to stop the video because I was out of time, so I'm going to pick it up right here where we were almost done talking. Okay, so we just went over local extinction. So the ecological extinction means that there are still a few numbers left on the planet, but there are so few that they are not able to basically play the role that they're supposed to in the environment. So, for example, a tiger is an apex predator, and because there are so few left, another animal has had to step in and take over that place. And then we have biological extinction. So this is the Chinese river dolphin. They are completely wiped out. There are none left, similar to the dinosaurs. Okay, now, IB wants you guys to know 3 specific examples. They want you to know an extinct, they want you to know a critically endangered, and an improved status organism. Okay? So you should be able to talk about all 3 of these if they were to ask you for specific examples. So for extinct, the western black rhino is the organism that we're going to use as an example. It is extinct, meaning there are none left. It has a hooked upper lip. It is an herbivore that lived in the savanna, and it was essentially poached for its horn because there are some primitive Chinese cultures that believe the rhino horns have medicinal purposes, and so they used it for that type of situation. All right, the orangutan is critically endangered, meaning that it is almost extinct. They live in the forest biome. Specifically, they're found in Borneo. They are essentially losing their habitats to fires. I don't know if you guys know a lot about a substance called palm oil, but palm oil is basically in every single type of cosmetic or toiletry article that we own: shampoo, soap, lotion, conditioner. So if you were ever to find a bottle of, shampoo or soap or lotion and it says palm oil free, then that is something that they're taking into consideration and trying to help prevent the extinction of orangutans. So what people are doing in Borneo is they are specifically burning down parts of the rainforest to convert it into farmland in order to grow these palm trees, which they sell for enormous profit. And what it's doing is it's causing the orangutan to lose its habitat, which obviously is going to kill it off. So the way that we're able to try to reach that and prevent that from happening is they're starting to use local education programs. So we'll see if hopefully that's going to cause an impact. All right, so improved status means at one point it was threatened or endangered, and it's no longer as serious as it was. So the Tasmanian devil, these are native to New Zealand and Australia. It is an improved status, meaning that it was endangered, but it is no longer endangered anymore. They live in the grassland, shrublands, and they basically declined because of invasive species and disease. So scientists in Australia and New Zealand created habitats with the government's help to protect that area so that they're no longer endangered. Okay, so this right here is showing us factors that make a species more prone to extinction. So some animals and plants are naturally going to be more susceptible to becoming extinct than others. So typically the ones that are going to be more susceptible or more prone to extinction are large-bodied species. So these probably are very large land and water mammals. a narrow geographical range, meaning they only have a very specific area that they live in. It's not a very broad area. Small population size. Seasonal migrants, so some animals have to migrate back and forth, which can cause lots of deaths. And then low reproductive potential. So these are going to be our case-selected organisms who just don't have a lot of offspring. Now, cities. This is one of those pieces of legislation that you guys had to learn about at the beginning of the semester. Okay, so cities or sites, both terms are correct, is an international attempt to conserve and restore biodiversity. So it's international, government, and non-government organizations. So you have things like the World Wildlife Fund and the Sierra Club. Those are non-government organizations who are endorsing conservation. Okay, so all three of these work together. So you've got the Endangered Species Act that factors into this as well in the United States. And it's a conservation approach. It is not habitat-based, meaning that they're trying to regulate trading, hunting, things like this that aren't going to necessarily have any impact on where they actually live. So we know that if you go back and look at page 3 in your notes, that's where the definition of this is. And basically it's a group that comes together every year and they vote on the status of lots of different organisms that we're seeing issues with. Okay. All right. Now, these are conservation approaches that are habitat-based. Remember, cities or sites is not habitat-based. These are going to be habitat-based. Okay? So, when we look at how to save organisms, how to improve their conservation, you have to look at basically where they live. And the ideal situation is to have an animal in a location that is not going to be heavily fragmented, heavily splintered. Okay? So if you were given the task of designing a habitat for conservation for an organism, what are the things that you have to look at when you're designing a habitat? There's 4 things that you have to look at. And these 4 things are the size, the edge, isolation, and corridors. Okay? So these are showing you effective versus ineffective designs. So if you look at the effective design, you would rather it be a larger than a smaller area, especially if you have larger population sizes, they need more space. The edge, okay? It's important to have less edge. And you're like, well, what does that mean? Well, if you compare this to this, this has more edges. There's nooks, there's crannies, and we don't want that. We really want to have as much of a continuous shape as possible, because this is going to reduce interactions between ecosystems and encroachment from humans as well as invasive species. Now, if for some reason you have to have these conservation areas isolated or fragmented, it's better to have the fragments closer together for protection than spread apart. Now, we also have corridors, and you guys watched a video over this and had a discussion post. These are important for migration or safe passage. So if you have areas that are splintered, it's important to have kind of like a natural bridge to connect them. Now, why do we care about this? Well, you look at it from one of 4 viewpoints. The ethical reason, is it right or wrong to conserve, to prevent extinction? Aesthetic, do we appreciate them because they're beautiful? Economic, Is there any profit from this? And then ecological, if an organism disappears from the environment, what is the cascade effect of that? How is it going to impact the trophic levels in the food chain? So one thing that a lot of countries have done in order to improve conservation efforts for some organisms is they will pick what is called charismatic megafauna. Okay? Charismatic megafauna. And yes, this is actually on the IB test. So charismatic means that it is something that is loved and appreciated by all different kinds of people. And megafauna is large. Fauna is animal. So it's a large animal. So one of the organisms that has benefited from this is the giant panda in China. So the giant panda is a flagship species. It appeals to the public. Most people love pandas and think they're super cute and amazing. Okay? But what it also does is it helps protect other species in that area as well. So, in the Sichuan, the giant panda sanctuary, okay, so in the 1960s, pandas were almost extinct because of human habitat destruction. We were tearing down their forests to build, housing, other types of development. What China decided to do is they protected 900,000 acres of land, which has allowed the panda numbers to rise, and it also impacted the red panda, which is also endangered, and the snow leopard, which is also endangered. Their numbers have been increasing as well. Now, it's also important that we conserve their food source. So pandas eat bamboo, so we have to make sure that the bamboo is also conserved as well. And this is done through educating the public, through ecotourism. People pay lots of money to go to China and see pandas in their natural habitat. That is ecotourism. I would pay to go see a panda. I mean, yeah, I can go see a panda in a zoo in San Diego, but it's one thing to see it in its natural habitat in China. And so that is also a money-making venture for the government itself. Okay? All right. Lastly, we have invasive species. So invasive species live and thrive where they're not supposed to. So they come in and they take over a habitat that is not native to them. They live and thrive outside of their normal habitat. They're able to outcompete native species, which causes them to become endangered. And they're typically introduced through human activities. So we have in Texas, we have the red fire ant. This came all the way from Argentina. The Africanized honeybee obviously came from Africa first. It was brought into Brazil, and then now it's in the United States. Zebra mussels came all the way from Russia. So it is important to take note of invasive species and their impact on the environment that they are transported to, because it does harm native organisms that are there. Okay, so we are done with this section of the notes. We'll have one more section to talk about in just a few days.